It's my pleasure right now to introduce to you the man who got me involved in all of this many years ago. And of course, you all know who he is. For over 10 years, he has worked tirelessly to try to find a home for this memorial that we are about to dedicate today. Vince Okamoto went to Vietnam in 1968 as a young second lieutenant assigned to the Infantry Airborne Rangers. His Gardena Nisei was awarded the highest medal the U.S. Army can give, the Distinguished Service Cross, for bravery in combat. During the time Vince was in Vietnam, he was promoted to the rank of captain, and in addition to the Distinguished Service Cross, he was awarded the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts for being wounded in action, as well as the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. Vince Okamoto is credited with being the most highly decorated living Japanese Vietnam veteran. Ladies and gentlemen, please give us a very warm hand for Vince Okamoto.
Let me start by first saying I look around the crowd and I'm so very pleased that so many of you could come out and join us. I see a real mixture of people representing different generations and representing different pursuits. I would before say I see some old soldiers out there as well as young soldiers, and no, I can't say that because I think I'm kind of an old soldier now myself. I see some women crying. And I'd like to tell you that if you're crying because you're proud, that's wonderful. Because you should be proud. If you're crying because you're grieving, that is certainly your prerogative. But I think you should not grieve today. Because today, we recognize and we share your loss. Now that I've got the mic, and I'm going to exercise a prerogative that I think is too long in coming. The woman that just did the honors as Mistress of Ceremonies, as previously indicated, in 1988 served as Mistress of Ceremonies for a very successful fundraising dinner that allowed us to get the money to erect the memorial. But, you know, she was kind of like a natural resource to the Japanese American community. And too often we take our natural resources for granted. It's not just the Japanese American Vietnam vets, but Cairo Health Services, Japanese American National Museum, Little Tokyo Service Center, the Japanese American Asian Journalists Association. And you talk about bipartisan support, UCLA and USC organizations. She does all these things. She had a prior function this morning. She juggles her schedules, and normally we say, with sincerity, thank you. But thank you is hardly enough. So I'd like to ask you, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, Tricia. I'd like to ask you all to call and write the moguls at KCBS and tell her what she has done for us, and tell them that we'd like to see more of her on prime time. You've all got programs. I think the best way to show my appreciation is to keep my comments short. There are too many people really to thank that have worked so hard to make this thing possible. But again, one more prerogative if I could. There is not an old soldier, not a young soldier, kind of a medium-aged soldier that's come all the way from Chicago via Dongtam in the Mekong Delta in the 9th Division, who is a major general, recipient of the Silver Star in Vietnam. And I'd just like to say thank you for coming all the way from Chicago. I'm talking about Major General James Mukiam. Jim, thanks a lot. To the JACCC, its board of directors, its officers and staff, I wish there was some way I can convey how thankful I am for you allowing us to be here today. For more than a decade, I've kind of felt like a member of the Israelites after the Exodus from Egypt. We have been wandering, yea, these many years in the desert, talking to politicians and bureaucrats, trying to find a place for this memorial. And they said, welcome. So we say thank you. On a cold, rainy day in November 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C. It consists of 148 panels of black granite, and it bears the names of 58,132 Americans killed or listed as missing in action in the Vietnam War. That particular monument has become the single most visited memorial in our nation's capital, averaging nearly 80,000 visitors per day. Most of the visitors are tourists. But somehow, you can tell the veterans who come there. Some come dressed in jeans and windbreakers, some clad in old jungle fatigues, some in three-piece suits, some come in wheelchairs. You can also tell the families and the loved ones who come because they stop at a particular panel and they reach out and touch a name etched on the wall. And if you stand at the wall long enough and you listen to what the people say, those that view it for the first time, there's a common thread. Because they say, my God, look at all those names. My God, all those names. In 1987, I took my family on vacation to Washington, D.C., and we went to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And I want to clarify a point. It is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, not the Vietnam War Memorial, because it certainly doesn't glorify a war. I had been to the wall on several prior occasions, but it was the first time for my wife and my son. And as we walked by panel after panel of the names, my son, who was then only 8 years old, was overwhelmed by the realization that each name represented an American soldier killed or missing in Vietnam. And I stopped by the panels that contained the names of my friends. The black granite face so highly polished it was like a mirror. And as I looked, I could see my own reflection alongside the names of my friends. And for a few brief moments there at the wall, we were together again. Remembering those lost friends, I began to weep. And it was the first time my son had seen me cry. And it disturbed him. So later, as we were walking back to the parking lot, he grabbed my hand and he said, Dad, why did America fight Vietnam? And I could only answer, I don't know, son. And then he said, why did you have to go to war when Alex and Jason's dad didn't? And again, I could only answer, I don't know, son. And then finally, he said, when I grew up to be a man, will I have to go off and fight in a war? And once again, I could only answer, I don't know, son. I hope not. That night, in my hotel room, I decided I would try to bring a similar memorial here to Los Angeles for the families of the men who were lost and consumed by the Vietnam War, and also because someday I wanted to bring my son to that memorial, and when he was old enough to try and answer the questions he put to me in Washington that I was incapable of answering then. So for me and for many of us, Today is the culmination of a long journey that's taken more than a decade. And today we gather to remember and honor the Japanese Americans, living and dead, who served in Vietnam. And to make known to the families of the men who perished there that we share your loss and your pain. But now I would like to direct my comments specifically to the veterans of Vietnam. And it's a story that I've told before, but I'd like to, if you would grant me the license, share it with you once more today. One very hot afternoon, half a lifetime ago, in a clearing on a nameless jungle mountaintop somewhere in the central highlands of Vietnam, I watched a young American soldier slowly bleed to death. He was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds and internal injuries, and despite the best efforts of the platoon medic, he could not be saved. And as the word got around that he was dying, the other members of his squad, his friends, began to gather around him to offer the only comfort they could, and that was their physical presence so he would not die alone. And one of his friends lit a cigarette, held it out to him and said, "Do you want to smoke?" And that young soldier simply responded, "No." And then another friend held out a canteen and said, "Can I give you some water?" And again, that young soldier simply responded, "No." And then finally his best friend knelt down and said, "Is there anything we can give you?" And that young soldier opened his eyes and in a surprisingly clear voice replied, "Yeah, give me tomorrow." A few minutes later he died. He was 19 years old and I was his platoon leader. In the intervening years since that day, I've often had occasion to think about that young soldier, and I'm very grateful to him. Because at times when things don't go right for me and I begin to feel sorry for myself, I think about him. I think about what he had to say, and it seems to me that even though he never finished high school, that in his last few minutes of life on earth he became very wise because he discovered what was, I think, truly important. He didn't ask for a big house, a fancy car, fame, or fortune. The only thing he asked for was tomorrow. His dying wish is what every person here today feels somehow that they have in great abundance. We sit here this morning able to feel the wind on our faces and the warmth of the sun on our backs, and we feel somehow that we are entitled to tomorrow and the tomorrow after that and the one after that, but we're not. And like that young soldier, we have a limit on the number of tomorrows allotted to us. So I say to the veterans of Vietnam, let us put the tomorrows that remain to us to good use, to savor each day, and to not let the anger and bitterness of the Vietnam War poison our lives. I hope, as veterans, that you can come to this place and find a sense of peace. I hope that here, a healing process can begin. I hope that this memorial will remind you what a precious gift life is. I hope you will bring your families there and allow them to give you and allow you to accept from them the love and support they very much want to give you. To the parents and to the loved ones of the men whose names are on this wall, I hope that you can come and take comfort in the fact that they are remembered and honored, and that we share your pain and your loss. I hope that the memorial can speak for you and tell the world that the names on this wall were your sons and your brothers, that they were young and they had hopes and dreams and they didn't want to die. I hope this memorial serves as a testimony that courage and self-sacrifice, even when rendered in a long, prolonged, and controversial war, are still virtues worthy of honor and respect. In the Bible, in the book of John, we are told that after the Roman soldiers had crucified Jesus, his mother Mary stood at the base of the cross, and when Jesus saw her, he said, "Woman, behold thy son." It is my sincere hope that this memorial will stand long after each of us are gone and will forever say to America, "America, behold thy sons." Thank you.